Hi everyone, welcome to this February episode of Coming Attractions with the Asian Film Archive. My name is Viknesh.
Hi, I'm KV.
And today we're here again, going to talk to you about our upcoming programs and give you some insights on why we chose some of these films and also some additional programs that we will talk about today as well. Mm-hmm. So the first thing, as we always talk about, is our new films, right, which are part of our regular releases and restored programs. So,
Yep. So I think for February, we have two new films. Well, one new film and one new old film, as usual. So I'm gonna talk about the release that we are gonna be presenting to the audience here. So I think these two films, firstly, are about the everyman in societies of maybe more. One in India and one in China. And then I'm going to talk about the film called Nasir, and it's directed by Arun Karthik. And it's actually a film that is adapted by Dilip Kumar's short story, A Clerk's Story. So that's the title of the short story itself. And really, this film really captivated us because it seems pretty ordinary on the surface, but there's a lot of undercurrents that hopefully people can discover as they watch along. And it's really about an observational chronicle of one seemingly ordinary day in the life of a seemingly ordinary sari salesman in the southern city of Coimbatore, which is a city in the South Indian state of Tamil Nadu. So a bit of this Indian state is actually a vast majority of Hindu devotees who follow the Hindu faith, of course, but there's also a considerable Muslim minority, numbering nearly 10% of the community. So I think that kind of hopefully sets the context to this film. And as I mentioned, Nasir is a ordinary salesman, but he's also of the Muslim faith. So I think as we go through this very intimate experience with this guy, there will be a sense of like dormant participation in his life, and it's also through this very intimate 4:3 aspect ratio cinematography, which really brings people closer to his life, his interactions with his wife, his selling saris, and all this while in the backdrop of different conversations and different prayers that happens in the backdrop. And I'm not going to reveal too much, but religion runs like an invisible thread through this whole film, and seemingly non-threatening until intolerance rears its ugly head. So that's how I would introduce this film.
Yeah, and it's by a film by a sort of an upcoming voice in Tamil cinema or Indian cinema. This is his second feature.
Yep.
And it won the NetPack Award at the Rotterdam Film Festival in 2020. So I think he's definitely a director to watch out for, and we are happy to be presenting his new work.
வாழ்க்கையில் பிடிப்பேதும் இல்லை எனக்கு, இல்லை எந்த புகாரும் கூட. நான் அசடும் அல்ல அதை வெறுக்கும் அளவுக்கு. ஆனால் இன்று இளமையின் அந்தி மாலையில் மௌனத்தின் ஒரு கரையில் நிற்கிறேன் நான். இரக்கமற்ற காலம் பெருக்கெடுத்து ஓடுகிறது, நூற்றாண்டுகளில் சமைந்துவிட. தனிமை பெய்து கொண்டிருக்கிறது மழையாக மறுக்கரையில். ஓ என் இனிய நண்பர்களே, கவிஞர் நசீர் கேட்கிறான், வாழ்க்கை என்பது தனிமை, மௌனம், இதை தவிர வேறு என்னதான் என்று. ஐயோ ஐயோ.
Like KV mentioned, the release and restored film kind of serendipitously have a connection. We didn't plan it that way, but it's sort of they have a connection.
We did plan it,
yeah. They're both about like a day in the life of an ordinary citizen. Except one is set in 2019 in India, another one is set in 1997 in China, which is our restored film called Xiao Wu, which was, when it first came out, was also called Pickpocket or Artisan Pickpocket. It is Jia Zhangke's debut film. As some of you might know, Jia Zhangke is one of the most well-known cinematic voices in the world, I would say, especially in East Asian or Chinese language cinema. Some of you might know his more recent works, such as Ash is Purest White, Mountains May Depart, and Touch of Sin. For some of you who might have been introduced to his work more recently. And of course, from the 2000s, there are several festival favorites he made, such as Platform, The World, and films like that, 24 City. So this is his debut film, and Xiao Wu is the name of the titular character in the film, who is a sort of a small-time crook. His main trick is pickpocketing, quite unsuccessfully, but he sort of like floats around town, and you can see like it's very hard for him to fit in, because this is set in 1997, where China was really, emerging as a global power, really. And if you look at it in the context of Asia, along with the sort of the Asian tigers like Korea, Singapore, they were all economies that were emerging. And of course, as you might also know, 1997 was also the year of the Asian financial crisis, where all these economies went boom and then they went bust. But yeah, significant point in Asian and Chinese history. And you see Xiao Wu as someone who is unable to keep up with his peers and his family members, who have all sort of moved on. They've moved on from petty crimes or small traits into just upgrading in life. His friends start to get married, and he's someone who sees himself as like he can't really go anywhere. So he just sort of trots around town. He kind of goes into this like KTV bar, befriends a hostess, gets rejected. But what you see here is really a parallel story of how you see you hear stories about a country's socio-economic development, but you don't really think about the people who get left out. The people who don't who quite kind of miss the boat in that sense. And this is one of those stories. And it really gives you this a diverse picture of what the world was like in this part of the world at that time. And I think when it came out, I believe it premiered in the Berlin Film Festival. It won an award. It went on to win several other awards. And it really announced the arrival of a bold new cinematic voice. Someone who was able to tell a story through very fresh perspectives. And the film itself, interestingly, was filmed in Jia Zhangke's own hometown, called Fenyang. He shot it with a very sort of minimal crew, sort of handheld, very guerrilla style, and all the actors in this film were sort of street cast. They were non-actors, and after this film, actually, many of them went on to actually act in films and be professional actors and stuff like that. So this film was very highly regarded at this time, and it's still kind of considered a very key film in East Asian cinema or Chinese language cinema, and it got restored recently by the Film Foundation, Martin Scorsese's Film Foundation, which, as you might know, also restored the Iranian film Chess Game of the Wind, which we screened last month. That is the restored film for the month of February. And
next up, we actually would like to also bring back to what else is happening in February, which is a continuation from the State of Motion 2021 Alternate Ops Realities film program, and we're continuing that from January into deep into February. And but before we go into the films, I would actually like this opportunity to give the stage to actually a few of our participating exhibiting artists in the visual arts exhibition, and they also made audio video based works, and I'd like to actually give them the time to share a bit about their works, and hopefully people have the chance to still come to the exhibition. I think about a week's left for you guys to see this local commissioned new works from the Asian Film Archive.
Hello, hi, I'm Diva, and I'm an artist, and I'm exhibiting at State of Motion 2021 Alternate/Up Realities. Yeah, so a little bit about myself. As an artist, I work in the mediums of installation, digital media, and sometimes performance as well. And for this exhibition, I'm showing a new work entitled Shelter Skelter. So the story of Shelter Skelter, or what's behind it, is that there's this museum called the Ancient Civilization Museum. And in the year 2222, it's holding an exhibition about the year 2022. What goes on in the lore of this exhibition is that Singapore has faced multiple crises in terms of like a global pandemic, the rising sea levels and climate change, and also digital data corruption through cyber warfare from neighboring envious nations. Yeah, so the exhibition, it takes place in this bunker that was used to preserve the last remaining denizens of Singapore. So, within the exhibition, you'll find copious amounts of Indomie and a lot of houseplants as well. And these were things that the last remaining citizens of Singapore, relied on to occupy their time or to survive within, all these crises. Yeah. So, with the Indomie, you'll find, it's described as the eternal Indomie stockpile because it is really the last remaining food source that was left to Singaporeans. And yeah, the plants, it's reminiscent of, the values of care and, growth, progress that, Singaporeans really hold near and dear to their hearts. Yeah. And so throughout this exhibition, you'll find videos that are displayed in ancient technologies such as televisions and, computer. And it basically goes through explaining the process of digital data recovery and piecing together the history of Singapore in the years 2022. By the program from the Ancient Civilization Museum entitled the System Integrated Technotronic Interpreter, or also known as City, who takes the form of a regular Singaporean girl. And so City sort of guides you around, digital remappings of Singapore and, looks into the lifestyles and cultures and, modes of living of the last remaining denizens of Singapore. So it's a lot of fun, I guess, first and foremost. I think it's a cute story and you should go and see it. Yeah. All right then. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Debbie and welcome to my house. Now we're inside the house and welcome to the studio where I make all the things. I don't have a studio, so this is my house, but also where I make stuff. This is where I work on a project which I like to call The Legend of Debbie, where I've taken a lot of my works that I've done over the years and I've now made them into a giant gallery full of portals into other worlds. I guess as an artist, I've been making different kinds of works over the years, And a lot of what I've made over the last 10 years has been presented in a rather traditional format of an exhibition. A lot of it is shown in the traditional physical exhibition. So I spend a lot of time building up a physical show, building physical works, arranging the works in a space. And then, people come down to see it. And sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not, because, I've got other things that I do as well. I've got a day job, I've got a baby, I've got other projects I'm working on all the time. So, building a physical thing, it's the thing is that I even though I have built a lot of physical shows, I also find that I get a lot out of talking to people, giving the talks, almost the things around, making a work. It's almost like when I'm standing there and telling people about all these physical works that I've built, I also figure out how to tell the story in a different way. So, I thought about why not try to make it kind of literal, like in the in a game world, it's make it into an interactive world where there's this narrator who's going to tell you about the work itself. So you see all the pictures of my work, and sort of all of them become sort of space, that you wander through. So I wanted to have this interactive game where you would walk around, and the narrator would sort of tell you about all the different works. There'd be this small ragdoll puppet that was going to talk and bounce along as it spoke, but of course, how do you say, time constraints, So, when we often talk about the idea of, digitalization or artists thinking of how they translate their work into a digital format. So, but I think it also takes a bit of maybe skill and knowledge of the medium in order to translate it in the way that you intended. So for me, over the years, I forced myself to gain some sort of 3D skills, coding skills that are necessary so I could build it on my own. I don't think I've totally cracked the way of working just yet, but it's enough for me to build the space like this, all the things that I want to build, and I'm able to kind of force myself to sort of translate it into these spaces where you can walk into it, and you see sort of a narrator telling you about it, telling you about the different spaces, the story, but the story itself that I'm telling you is not exactly the exact story. I wanted this Debbie narrator to be sort of almost like parody of myself, but of course, over the years I've almost find myself becoming a parody of myself, to the point of parody times parody, like what's going on. So a lot of the stories are meant to sort of transport you to another place without having to leave the spot, so it's a bit like when someone tells you a story about another time and place, or you read a book or watch a film, and then you feel yourself transported to a different reality, a different world, where a bit like I kind of imagine making future versions of this experience where you're just all the stories that I'm telling will be different. I'm going to change up all the stories again, a bit like layers of paint, of graffiti being accidentally peeled off a wall, so for me it's kind of like an experiment with the narrative possibilities of interactive video game. I think it's only at the start, really. So this is the Legend of Debbie, which I should say as well, the legend refers to the map legend, so a map legend tells you about what kind of things there are, like a kind of like a wormhole, or a sort of way out, so you have a legend that tells you where the things are. Okay, yeah, so this is a legend. You can also see. Ooh.
In the near future, the Republic of Senki is divided.
If seaweed means money, then I'm gonna live, breathe, and love seaweed.
The chorus is nothing but thieves.
I'm constantly reminded of the fact that I don't belong.
The roots of fire and border.
This is not sci-fi. This is heartbreak.
Hello, we are Pure Ever, and we're here to introduce our latest project called Sunset X. This is not sci-fi, this is heartbreak. So a little bit about us. We Pure Ever is an alliance of people whose goal is to provide visibility for underrepresented or emerging creatives across all vectors of political, social, and creative interests. We also aspire to find commonality and collective foresight through nuanced and intense forms of art making, one that hopefully occupies a more generous spirit of collaboration, creativity, networking, and solidarity making.
So before we start, I just want to read the synopsis real quick to kind of give you guys a brief idea of what the film is about. It is a dizzying tale of forbidden love between three individuals from Republic of Sinki. With a flourishing kelp industry that is turning the country's capital into capital, the bearing of a capitalist scene upon the contemporary struggles of the Sinki people is reflected through the lives of Eden, Yasmin, and Wanji. In a non-linear ocean of visual fantasy, eco-enterprise, cult economy, and alternative imaginings of spirituality, the protagonists find themselves mired in a rupturing apocalypse of the harrowing heart.
Yeah, so for Sunset X, we actually were looking at how people would more or less dress in the future with the circumstances of the environment, and also these two different groups of people, with like striking differences. So the way they live and the way they are would inform how be informed by how they dress as well. So for example, for Yasmin's character, we looked at pieces that were a bit more, easy to move and more functional, and things that were more body fitted to the body. And then for Eden's character, we looked for things that were a bit more, I guess, formal looking, or a bit more towards like how what might necessarily be accepted or normalized in the future. Yeah. So we have costume designers like Farah, who designs pieces that are a bit more maximalist and a bit more like things that are a bit more extravagant. So they fitted our theme really well, as her designs have and things were very voluminous. And then we had like Brian, who worked with colors of green and blue, which were very much in tune with our theme, because we talked a lot about kelp, seaweed, and also the sea, as well as the sunset. So we have other costume designers like Mia, Masri, Jane, who all also had pieces that were, for Jane's especially, hers was very much functional, so you could move around easily in her dress pieces, and they were all very, I guess, like tech wear. Yes. Then for Masri's pieces, it was they had the use of like light. When you shine light on his garments, they actually would reflect. So that was how we imagined the mix of like colors, functionality, and also, I guess, design that is more for the body. Yeah. And how that would help them live in the environment in the future.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start the set. So I think most of our shoots was mostly done in studio. So when it comes to like a confined space, set design comes to play an important role, I would say. Prior the shoot, we did like a very thorough planning on the type of set we want to execute and produce, aligning with the script that we wrote. So before we set out to source for the props, like fabrics, rocks, and vase. So we even made like a giant stone from scratch. We're also very thankful for our collaborators, Gandhi and Rakesh, who generously offered and contributed most of their items to this film. I think without our contributions, we couldn't have made this film pretty. So other than filming in the studio, we also did outdoor shoots. But outdoor shoot comes with a challenge as well. Prior to the shoot, we did a location recce. So our selected location was Changi Beach, Jurong Hill, and Marina One. Yeah, shown in slide 7. For us, shooting outdoor is quite tough. It was a challenge because Mother Nature itself is unaware of the importance of the shoot. So, and one of our late night shoot, it started drizzling, and we had to come up with solutions to protect our film equipment, sets, and most importantly, our cast members to avoid them getting a cold. And also, I think with the pandemic that's going on right now, we have to make sure that our cast and crew members on set adhere to government guidelines on social distancing. So yeah, overall, filming both outdoors and indoors was a fun and insightful experience for all of us. And I think we learned a lot from this.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the food design in the film, which actually isn't that a bigger part of the film. But we wanted to also imagine the kind of food that people will be eating in the city, in that city at that time. So, things that were sort of relatable, seemed familiar, but still you could place in the future. And we thought of using jellies because they had this very clear sort of like clinical feeling, but it could also look very pretty. And then one of the other reasons we chose jellies, it's because konnyaku itself is actually made from seaweed. So we're kind of imagining like a konnyaku like proliferation in a place where seaweed also had been expansively growing.
So not only the film and storyline is important, but towards making the film, we also considered music and to collaborate with musicians locally and regionally, such as Cosmic Child, a band in Singapore, Anti-Shift, who's an electronic musician, Victoria, who's a musician also from Malaysia, and also Zachary Dominguez, who's also a classical musician. One of the collabs we did were with Zachary and his team of singers from Yongsuto Conservatory of Music, and he was the one who composed the prelude intro for the film, which is currently available on our Instagram. So he called it La Sirene X, which is a play of words from La Sirena, which is a mythical creature in the sea, I think a Filipino mythical creature who's a sea witch. So this sort of was inspired by the plot that we've written, which is also an ode to the sea peri as well in the film.
Yeah, I guess you could say that like Sunset X is kind of like our reinterpretation of like a whole hodgepodge of like film references that are under the sci-fi genre. And of course, like when we first approached to do this commission, Kiwi like very kindly gave us this amazing like recommendation, which is Apocalypse X, which was showing at Oldham Theatre like a few weeks ago. Amazing film from our Malaysian counterparts. And I think the thing about our film is that we can call it as like a somewhat non-linear film, but there are a lot of like points and tropes that we did note from some of the references here, which also include like Shulia Chang's IKU. Below that, it's a Pet Shop Horrors, an anime that's kind of like quite obscure and only available on YouTube, like a few episodes of them. On the right column is Tokyo Drifter, and below that is actually one of the scenes from Tsai Ming-liang's film. Which film is it? It's A Wayward Cloud. Yeah, where one of the main characters kind of like transforms into this like water creature, water dragon, and is just kind of like frolicking in a half-empty water tank. So I think if you watch our film, you can see like pops of like where we got influences from all these other films.
I think these are just an overview of some of the elements that got put into the film that we felt reflected not only the the narrative, the characters, but also like each of us as an individual as well as a collective. And that's how we envisioned like a sort of future that was reflective of our own present. And we would like to thank State of Motion and the curators, Kaylee, Shaida, for having us. It's been really, really fun. And if you haven't seen it yet, you should go see it. It's at Marina 1, West Tower, level 4. And if you want more information, it's on the State of Motion website and also on our Instagram, which is what?
Pure.ever.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
All right, so what you've just heard are some words from a selected few artists from State of Motion, and actually, we mentioned State of Motion last week, and KV spoke quite a bit about it. There's like the exhibition, the film programs, but there are also many other sort of programs and talks happening. So KV, maybe you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so just now what we heard was from the local artists from Singapore, and these are all like newly commissioned works for the show. And for other dialogue sessions that we also have published since, you can actually find it on our website and on Asian Film Archive's Facebook. So we have actually 2 other artists panel discussions that has already been released, I think last month. So those are already available. So of course, what you just saw was kind of like an exclusive for Singapore Community Radio, for them to actually, for the other artists that didn't get to be on board this panel discussions, for them to share a bit of their works. So, as I mentioned, there are these published talks that are already online for you guys to watch, to know more about the arts exhibition. There is also this special audio-led tour called City Walks that is already available at the exhibition itself. So these are powered by QR codes on the individual artwork information panels that is on site. So as some people might know, State of Motion has always had like a tour component to it for the public to really get to up close, to get a more intimate understanding of the show. And this time round, we've kind of decided against it because I think the whole physical idea of having tours is definitely a bit more troublesome in this time and age. So what we had done is to invite an AI called CT. So CT is also an kind of imaginary, an invention from Diva Aga's artwork called Shelter Skelter. And basically she expands herself into the whole exhibition to give everyone a little take on her experiences of the show. So that can be found at the show itself through QR codes for people to find out. And of course, we have to have the film screenings. So then that's something that we should be talking about now, because that leads into the month of February. I think by this time, there are still quite a few films left, and this is our chance to actually share them with you. Yeah. So I think with February, like, we have some quite distinctive Southeast Asian films to share, and today we are going to share 3 of them. And how about Viknesh? You can start off with the one film.
Sure. So last week KV highlighted like three picks, and today we're going to talk about three more picks for this kind of last stretch of the film program. So the first film that I would like to talk about is called 10 Years Thailand, which was it's an anthology film from 2018. It's actually part of a franchise of sorts that started with 10 years, the film 10 Years, which was in Hong Kong in 2015. It was, again, another anthology film, brought together some young emerging directors to talk about, sort of project Hong Kong into the next 10 years to see where they are headed, politically, socially. And each film took a certain socio-political topic and sort of expanded on it. And when it came out, it was, it was received very well. Famously, it beat Star Wars in the box office. And it went on to win several awards. And because of its sort of very political nature about Hong Kong independence, it was also famously banned by China and very embraced by Hong Kongers in general. It then inspired a series of spin-off projects, namely from Japan, Taiwan, and of course from Thailand, which are also doing very similar things about projecting their own countries' kind of trajectory into 10 years into the future. So here we have four directors who are of very distinctive style. We have Aditya Asarat, we have Chulayanon Siripol, we have Wisit Sasanatyang, and Apichapong Wirasetaku, who many of you might know. You get these four different takes on where Thailand is headed. Quite poignant if you look at how things are now with the re-emergence of a certain social consciousness and protests that started in 2020, largely youth-led in Thailand. I guess these films take on an interesting new meaning in a sense. Also in the context of the region, as some of you might know, this sort of meme of solidarity called the Milk Tea Alliance, which is something that is that unites activists and protesters from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Thailand, who are sort of united by their own cultural milk tea. So whenever you have tweets or social media posts by people from these different countries, they sort of hashtag Milk Tea Alliance as a form of solidarity. And I think when you look at it as this film franchise as well, we started in Hong Kong and then went on to these other countries, you get this sense that we are all in this together, trying to own our own history and our own democratic freedoms. And so this is a film that is I guess it's an interesting take on the idea of science fiction. It's not just about aliens and technology and and teleportation or whatever, but also the idea of science fiction has always been about people envisioning for themselves a different future, or a future that they would like to own and achieve. And this is such a film. So there is 10 Years Thailand.
Yep. So that was 10 Years Thailand, and for myself, I will introduce two distinctively Southeast Asian films, but about alien encounters. But then again, these alien encounters is maybe not what you might imagine them to be. It's not in the very traditional sci-fi way, as these independent filmmakers actually interpret the idea of alien in more contemplative ways, if I might say. So the first film that I would like to introduce is this film called For My Alien Friend, directed by Jet Leco from Philippines. And this film will be making its international premiere with us. So we're very honored that Jet has allowed us to host this film to our Singapore audience. This film is, it takes the form of an alien encounter by way of so-called a time capsule, if I was to interpret it as such. So this is a time capsule of an unknown narrator's audio-visual fragments, his memories, and it's almost like he broadcasted this time capsule into the unknown, and for someone to pick it up. Hence, he's actually trying to reach out to someone to look at his life on Earth in a unstated time period. So in that sense, he's actually really showing a personal visual diary of himself over his years of living. I think he's in his mid-30s now, so we're talking about a span of maybe 30 plus years. And in this film, you actually see personal anecdotes, philosophical musings, as well as memories of with his mother, with his family, with his friends, and even with his ex-girlfriend. So, like, basically his memories being jumbled up almost in a stream of consciousness way, like how human mind works a lot. And I guess at the end of the day, my interpretation is that he's trying to reach out. The alien that he's trying to reach out is to an unknown viewer, which might be you if you come and join us at Odeon Theatre here. Because I guess he is trying to introduce his life in the way that he knows it, the way that he lives it in an existential sense, and to try to connect to you as a viewer. And I think that is a device that I think he uses quite well in this film. So hopefully alien friends can join us at this screening.
God exists. 360 degrees. God exists. God exists. 360 degrees. Like unsolved mysteries and wild strawberries. The bass is instrumental. It hits your central solar system. Death without the funeral. God exists. God exists. God exists for the displaced. God exists for the lone wolf.
The other film is a Vietnamese film. It's called The Tree House, directed by Truong Minh Ki, and it's a film also quite self-referential in a way, and it's about a Vietnamese filmmaker who have relocated to planet Mars in the year 2045. So it's something that's set in the future, but then the whole film has no visuals of Mars at all. In fact, Mars is only being represented by a black frame. So again, it's subverting the ideas of what sci-fi movies look like or even sound like. So it's actually someone who is trying to communicate back to planet Earth or to look back at archival footages. And in particular, these archival footages are of a rural forested area in Vietnam, particularly focusing on some ethnic communities, which in a way also made to feel alien in their own place. So there's a certain parallel that he's trying to make. And I guess the idea of this alien relationship extends to the state and to a very personal sense, how everyone is trying to construct an identity. And if memories are lost, how can people do that, and how identities get affected by the loss of memories. So there is this like tenuous relationship in this film that I found really moving. And again, these two so-called alien encounter sci-fi films, alternative ones, hopefully we can bring an audience here for people to appreciate them.
Anh đặt chân lên sao Hỏa vào khoảng đầu năm 2045. Anh chỉ mang theo một ít đồ từ nhà. Người ta nói không cần mang theo nhiều đồ làm gì, vì dù sao ở đây, mọi thứ hoàn toàn mới và khác, một cuộc sống mới. Trong số những thứ anh mang theo, có một máy quay phim và một máy thu tiếng nhỏ. Anh dự định sẽ làm một phim nào đó trong những lúc rảnh rỗi. Một phim tài liệu về cuộc sống trên sao Hỏa chẳng hạn.
So these 3 films will all be sort of screening over the next few days, and there only one screening left of each, I believe.
I believe, yeah.
So, yeah.
And I guess with this, we also like to close the session. Yeah. So we close the session by, again, promoting to everyone what is upcoming that we know of. So our monographs project is still ongoing. And as the months go on, we will be releasing essays, the written essays every month. And we will also be making announcements, hopefully soon, about the video essays that probably will be released sometime in mid this year. So those will be, we'll let you guys know about that. And I think there's another exciting announcement for the month of March that I would like Viknesh.
We've been working on this for a while now. This is our new series that we're launching called Retrospective, where we will take this time to take a deep dive into particular filmmakers' works. And the first filmmaker that we've sort of chosen to helm this series in March will be none other than Wong Kar-wai.
Which I think everyone is familiar. Well, hopefully everyone is familiar with. If you're not familiar with him, then, well, you should come down and watch.
This
because
is the time to do it.
Yeah, and these films are all restored 4K. And, well, this is a really rare chance, and it has kind of made its rounds around North America. And, well, this will be the Singapore premiere of this restored Wong Kar-wai classics. And hopefully you'll join us right here at the Oldham Theatre for that. That is coming up in March, and we will speak more about Wong Kar-wai for the next episode. But till then, this is the episode for February 2021.
Yep. And thanks again to Singapore Community Radio for this wonderful collaboration. And thank you all for listening and supporting. And please, if you have any feedback or any comments, do write in to SGCR or just to us, Asian Film Archive. We would love to hear from you. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next month.
And see you at the theatres.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.